Hello and welcome to One-on-One Shots with B. Dave Walters. I am B. Dave Walters, and today I am joined by the magnificent, the splendiferous, the boyishly handsome
Oh, stop.
Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Woo! Oh my goodness. Thank you so much for having me, Dave. It's an honest pleasure. I'm so happy to be here. How exciting.
It's now the tables have turned, sir, where you had me on your show to nerd out and talk about D&D, and now it is I who have you on my show to nerd out.
How the turntables. Look at that.
Indeed. If a person has been living under a digital rock for the last couple of years and do not know who you are, or at least cannot place you, where might people know you from, good John?
Hello, one and all. My name is Brennan Lee Mulligan. You may know me from College Humor, where I've done sketch comedy for the past couple of years. CEO series of videos there. Worked on a bunch of shows for Dropout.tv, which is College Humor's streaming platform. Written questions for Actually, Internet Nerd Sensation, and I'm also the GM for Dimension 20, which is College Humor's actual play show, and also hosted Adventuring Academy, the tabletop strategy background theory podcast where we talk with awesome players like B Dave himself. You can catch that episode as well. It's on YouTube for free, available. That's all the stuff that I do online.
And you were the DM for a little show called Roll in the Family of the Slumbering Forest.
Woo!
It's
incredible. The Slumbering Forest was awesome. There was a family-centered 6-episode game that was run for B. Dave, his 2 amazing daughters, Lexi and Kaylin, and for Adam Bradford and his son Luke, and then Kelly Knox and her daughter Maddie. And it was a joy, fairy tale adventure, and hijinks galore.
Yep, that's also up on YouTube. It was a 6-part series. It was fairly early in the lockdown, which is weird because now it really feels like it was like last year sometime, and it really was like a month and a half ago.
Time has become so relative. We've either been in lockdown for 8 years or it just happened.
Yeah, it is a flat circle. I reject linear time along with pants and all the other lies of the before times. Yes. That is true.
Yes, these conventions are exposed for the lies that they are. Absolutely.
Yeah. That and casual drinking hours. But it's literally when time has no meaning. It is literally not just 5 o'clock somewhere. It may as well be 5 o'clock here. Just whatever.
Things do become ritualized, and I realize you realize the importance of tradition and ritual. I do at least every time I get up, and I have a little pair of shoes that I wear for my commute from the bedroom to the desk where I work. And every little morning I go here's my little ritual to be a person. It's my little thing that I do. And it really truly does feel like abjuring the big bad world every time I put my little shoes on that I don't need to put on, but I put them on to feel like it's grown-up time during the day.
But there's extreme value in that, both in terms of just it's your trigger for your mind that it's like, oh, it's time to be serious. To kind of put the guardrails on, especially when working from home, which is new to so many people. You have to compartmentalize that it's like, oh, I'm working now, but also I'm not working now. Like when Mr. Rogers would come in and put the sweater on, took his shoes off, changed his shoes, put his sweater on. That's you're like a cleric of Mr. Rogers, Brendan. Or you could be a warlock of Mr. Rogers, equally acceptable.
The idea of Fred Rogers being like, well, hey there, neighbor. I'd love to make a bargain for your soul.
It's going to be a good deal, though. I'm going to give you top dollar, and I'm going to give you a really nice Eldritch Blast. And won't you be my subject?
It's a beautiful day for an eldritch blast, a beautiful day for a blast. Um,
So we're done. Thank you all for tuning in. This has been a one shots. Brennan Lee Mulligan. We will not top that. The internet has achieved perfection as we've turned Mr. Rogers into a warlock patron, complete with his own intro song in the first.
Incredible.
Yeah. I'm gonna go stat out Mr. Rogers as a warlock patron. Now, you and I were just talking a few minutes ago about how you got into D&D, because I was lamenting the fact that I've gotten to play more second edition D&D lately. And I say lamenting because I was there at the time. I've been playing this game for nearly 30 years now. But one thing I've said many times is I, as a person, have no concept of nostalgia. Like, I do not wistfully long for bygone days. Like, it's just not a thing I do. Yeah. And so when I go back and I like play old games that I enjoyed at the time, whoo, you know, second edition's rough. Like, kids today don't know how easy they got it. Like, I was out there, I was calculating Thaco again. I just
so bad. It's so bad. I remember being 10 years old and learning to play for the first time, and an adult literally like crafted this tool out of paper that was like two interlocking pieces of like just notebook paper that they had somehow assembled in a way to create like a slider with an arrow along a numbered series of notches that kind of explained like you put the notch relates to your Thaco, and you slide it to this certain thing, and the number underneath it will tell you what you actually need to roll on the die to hit that number. And I remember A, being very grateful as a child that this adult made me this tool, but B, it's not great if a 10-year-old that generally speaking is pretty like receptive to like, here's new things I don't know about the world. As a 10-year-old, I was like, this can't be the most efficient way. Like, if I'm a child judging this and being like, this is more crunchy than it needs to be by some order of magnitude.
It's like Charlie Chaplin's quote, you know, it's like a child of 5 could understand this. Quickly, someone fetch me a child of 5, you know? Yeah. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. It's people, if you haven't played second edition, and again, hey, shout out to 2E, because if it had first edition, because if those hadn't existed, we wouldn't have had a fifth edition. But man, it was the central mechanic was Thaco, because you hear when I'm all like, you know, back in my day, we had to calculate Thaco. We had a bin bars lift gauge score is what you had there. You had a percentage chance to sneak. The way the game worked was, you got a lower armor class was better, so a smaller number. So 2 was harder to hit than 3, 1 was harder to hit than 2, and the lowest possible armor class was 0, which is why sometimes you still hear old people like me refer to something having a low armor class even though it's a big number.
Yeah.
And you had to hit armor class 0, and you had a certain number that your character had to roll to hit the lowest armor class possible. And this number also went down as you went up in levels, because of course it did. So every time you fought anything, you had to calculate what you needed to roll to hit it.
Yeah. And a bafflingly complex system. Yeah. I remember also in 2E, they had the whole thing of, for some reason, every ability score worked in its own way. And then strength, you would get to 18 strength, and then they had a percentile at 18. So it's like, okay, yeah, you can have 18 strength flat, and that's pretty good. Or you could have 18 35 or 1850 or 1876, and all of those are very like it's so there's suddenly a granularity at 18, and the highest of that was 1800. It's like, oh, if you have 1800, like, incredible. But then also you could just move to 19 after that, and it's like it's
All of
like,
this was for naught. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
why did
Well, and I mean, like I like the thing I'm going to be doing. I'm playing a cleric ranger magic user because there was only the magic users and illusionists. That was the thing. They weren't even the edition we're playing. Like they weren't even mages yet. Like fighter mage thief what had not come into being yet. And it's like, hey, by the way, you've got no armor and 6 spells for the entire day. Good luck. Like good luck. And
yeah.
it is great to see the game evolve how it has though over these years. So let me ask you this, since we're nerdifying here.
Mhm.
Do you have a favorite edition of the game?
Whoa. My heart will always drift back slowly to 3.5, but I can acknowledge that 5e is probably I think that you can look at changes made to the system in 5e that are directly responsible for a streamlined play experience, at least relative to earlier editions of the game. It's one of those things where like, um, uh, okay, for example, it's way harder to make a busted character in 5e than it was in 3.5, and that seems like a pretty good argument for a better designed system, unless like me you go like, but I want to make a busted character. I want all those like hours and hours of like
Mhm.
reading source books to be like rewarded. It depends on what you're trying to get from the system. I think that there is that little analogy of just like, um a like fresh product bought from the Apple store that's sleek and beautiful and intuitive and user friendly versus something like a crunchy homemade PC that you've
It's gonna
modded out.
start like a lawnmower. Like, go play me some video games. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it depends what you're looking for. I certainly, when I have new players, it's almost impossible for me to think about wanting to start up a new 3.5 campaign. If I had new players, like,
Yep.
like, why introduce someone to prestige classes, right?
Yeah.
If you don't have to.
Yep.
Um, uh, so that's where I stand on that.
I completely agree with that. I think 3.5 was both the height and the depths. I can say I can genuinely say I won D&D. I made a character that was unkillable. I had a druid planar shepherd with the saint template, vows of peace, non-violence, and poverty, which if those words don't mean anything to you, do not Google them, but it's the character's unstoppable. And
Unstoppable.
and they were I had them they were a mix of Gandalf and the Doctor. That was the character concept. Uh and it just was I just couldn't be beaten. And as a min-maxer in my heart, that was both good and bad. Like do you by chance you remember the cartoon Dexter's Lab?
Yes, I do.
You
Yes,
ever
yes, yes.
do you by any chance remember the episode where, because of course, he's trying to keep DD out of his laboratory, but the episode when he finally did it, but the lab was so secure he couldn't go in either. And he's so sad at the end that he achieved his goal, but stopped himself. And that's how it was for me with that character.
Like, at
Yeah.
what cost? What have I done to this game? No, first of all, let's just because you've alighted on it, let's just acknowledge the fact that whatever checks and balances they had on new features being added were not present when Book of Exalted Deeds came out. That source book is rife with, you go like, what? Like, famously, it's like it's so I'm playing. I have a home game that's been going on for 11 years now that
Wow.
runs 3.5. The characters are all 18th level,
Mhm.
and and we've had huge gaps in our playing because we all live in different cities now. But now that now that everyone is used to being on Zoom all the time, we've started to play remotely and find that that's actually a pretty good way to connect and play. We used to be like, no, we'll always meet in person, and now we're kind of like connecting that way. And
narrator voice, you will not.
You will. And so now I'm being a diligent DM again. And because our time used to be a lot more precious because we were like flying across the country to play, I was never being as diligent a DM as I could and like reviewing character sheets. And now that I actually have some time, I'm like going over it, and everything I find that I have to be like, wait, what the hell is this? It's from Book of Exalted Deeds without fail. Yep. One of our characters is literally a Saint template planar shepherd druid, which is crazy that there's that synchronicity. It's really good. And
it's too good.
It's too good. There are certain things like that. Any character that dipped into an arcane class at 3 levels of abjurant champion minimum, full base attack plus full D10 hit die plus full spell progression. What's going on there? But the funny thing about the Book of Exalted Deeds is I literally the other day came across with like two rulings where the 2 things I nerfed them both with official errata. So it's not just like a fiat DM say so. It was Unearthly Beauty, the spell, and then Star Mantle, and both of them I was like, gang, I'm gonna come with you I have great news. I have found a way to make combat thrilling for you again by completely nerfing one of these things that you keep trying to do. Because Star Mantle is a thing that like it's a spell that lets you roll a reflex save anytime you take damage and take no damage from weapon attacks on a DC 15. So and then you take half damage. But if you have evasion, that gets knocked down to 0. So in any case.
And then with the Saint template, they had to roll a will save to even try and hit you. And then if they hit you, the weapon had to roll a con save or just break harmlessly on your hallowed flesh. And you're like, also, you're going to do that while I'm a 12-headed celestial hydra because reasons, because I can wild shape. But yes, sorry. Yeah, I think that, well, sorry, you were still telling your story. I'm interrupting you.
No, not at all. I mean, it's just more crunchy. The other one was Unearthly Beauty, which is an 8th level sanctified druid spell that allows you to, you become so blindingly, radiantly beautiful for a moment that all creatures that see you within 30 feet will save or die. That's just will save or die. That's it. And I looked at that, and the player who was doing it was sort of like being like, okay, I'm going to just shout to all my allies in a language only they speak to close their eyes real quick.
Hit the deck. Then, yeah, right.
Yeah, hit the deck. And I had to say, look, we have to create a system for eye closing. The game, again, this is Book of Exalted Deeds. It's like, it's really unspecified. There's no system for eye closing. Also, I think you and I both know that this creates a super good. This is supposed to be you know, Toreador style, like rising in unearthly beauty kind of thing. But what this effectively is you being like now and like contact or whatever, and like a camera flash bulb, just like, and then you're like done with it.
It was so beautiful.
It's like if the entire like Ark of the Covenant scene in Indiana Jones took place in like 3 frames of the film. It's like, holy shit, what just happened? It's like, that's not cinematic. It's not fun.
It's, you know, and again, for those of you that weren't there for 3.5, I spent a lot of years in 3, because I was a refugee that went over to Pathfinder during the dark times of 4th edition, which those of you that have been watching with me for a while know my feelings on 4th edition. But the thing about 3.5 is it suffered from the law of unintended consequences, where there'd be like one book that said, you know, you get a +4 bonus if you're an elf. And then another book would be like, you get a +4 bonus if you're wearing black. And then another book would be, you get a +4 bonus on a Tuesday. And then another book would be like, you get a +4 bonus if your name starts with a vowel. And then monsters like me would come along and be like, so let me get this straight. If I attack on dawn of the 5th day from the east, or when I'm riding my horse in my white robe, I do an extra 86d6, and it would be true. And you're like, yeah, that's what happens. And like,
there were also certain things that just like 5e did away with that did really improve game. Like I think the big thing was critical hits only multiplying dice and not multiplying modifiers is huge,
yeah,
because 3.5 was rife with dice rapidly becoming meaningless, where
yeah,
it would be like, look, like, there are certain things where it's like
it's
we
a
have a
rocket tag.
yeah, it's rocket tag. It's like, it's like, okay, I'm trying to get so many raw numerical modifiers into this attack because my weapons are valorous and I'm doing a lance and when I do this. So really it's the dice are frivolous. When I crit with this, it's that I have this raw plus 21 modifier, which is now times 8. And it's like, so it's like, so I'm doing between 150 and 165 damage, depending on what I roll. And you're like, there's a 15-point spread, but your minimum and your maximum are so close. And like you're saying, rocket tag, it gets to a point where, depending on what you're optimizing for, you get really goofy stuff happening where it's like, okay, everyone involved in this combat is doing enough damage to kill whoever they're hitting many times over, but no one has invested in being tanky. So all of these sweet little babies are just eminently killable. So it's like, yeah, glass cannons galore.
One of the things that I had to do to compensate is, again, for those of you that don't know your history, kids, Pathfinder began with the Rise of the Rune Lords module, which was a D&D module. And then when 4th edition came out and it was so beloved, they branched out and made its own standalone product, which then ultimately gave rise to the Pathfinder that we know now. So at least, especially in the early days, it was very, 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 very mechanically similar to 3.5. So I did a Pathfinder game that we did all the way from level 1 to level 20, and even did the mythic tiers, the whole 9 yards. And I got to the point that in those games, which is a trick that I still use on occasion, but I need a lot less of in 5th edition, was I was just like, I would just know in my mind, like, I'm not even going to start counting the hit points till the 3rd round. Like, I mean, barring you just doing something fantastically ingenious, you're just not going to kill this thing in the first 2 rounds, because otherwise you're right. And it will, and a lot of it is action economy also.
Yeah.
Legendary actions helped with that, but the group is going to get to do between 6, maybe 12, maybe 18 things to the monsters, 1 to 3 things, where you're like, spell, attack, breath weapon. Spell, attack, claw, bite. Spell, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, the poor creature had no chance.
It's really, really true. That legendary actions is, I think, one of the best pieces of design, because you quickly realize that if a creature's not fighting with minions or doesn't, like, there is nothing as good as getting a turn. Like, whatever your turn is, getting a turn is the best thing, right?
Yep.
And those legendary actions are huge for making that classic cinematic moment of fighting a single villain feel as dangerous as it should feel. And it's a really beautiful mechanic too, because it's based on how many enemies are being fought. Like, in other words, the nice thing about it is that, like, if you're fighting, evil vampire lord or whatever, that their ability to take legendary actions is based on how many people they are fighting. So if you're fighting one-on-one, the creature can actually only take that one legendary action at the end of your turn. But if you're fighting a whole host of people, the monster kind of, blowfishes a little. It gets scarier because it's facing more opponents, which is dope. And it makes those battles feel like they should feel.
I was thinking the other day about a hypothetical 6th edition. I mean, looking at the game in the current state of the game right now, I can't even really imagine, like, what needs to be changed or updated or facelifted in such a way that makes this like another game now, you know? I mean, not counting just being like, well, it's in space and it's Spelljammer. I'm like, well, that's a setting. That's not an addition, you know? Like it's
Yeah.
and I think that's a testament to the current state of the game that you're like, this is a good enough approximation of what we showed up to do.
Hmm.
You know?
Yeah, I feel like the things that like I'm trying to think how to phrase this. Um, uh, I think that like well, I can agree with you that the things D&D needs to address are probably not the mechanics of the game,
Mhm.
which seem pretty like 5e. The gameplay of it seems to be satisfying what people need. I think that there's a lot of other stuff that D&D needs to address. I think that there's uh, there is a point that I see some game designers make too that I do agree with to some extent about certain things, certain systems that could be put in place. Um, that like 5e famously moved away from 4e, which was very like MMORPG. It was like trying to kind of be like Warcraft with pen and
Mhm.
paper, right?
Mhm.
Um, and 5e moved more towards like storytelling and emphasizing that stuff. And I've seen criticisms of D&D that I do agree with partially that are like, well, it's so clear that this is still primarily a combat simulator. Like there's this whole system of awarding XP for combat encounters, but this sort of one sentence about like role playing awards. And I do see the
Mhm.
point there, but I also think that it would be interesting to see certain things like, oh, if could there be a system in a new edition of D&D to further emphasize role playing and give new or beginning dungeon masters tools for how to create those elements in their game. But then the flip side of that also is, I think, uh, some systems over systematize role playing and storytelling, which are the one thing that actually sometimes I think you want you and your friends to be fully in control of at the table.
Mhm.
Like when I'm playing with my friends, like I need systems for combat because in real life we're like eating Doritos at a coffee table, and like
Yeah.
we can't approximate that in person.
Yeah.
But the improv and the storytelling, I definitely would always want that to be more in the domain of judgment of the players at the table. But it would
Yeah.
be cool, I think, if a further edition of D&D did emphasize like non-combat, non-violent solutions to problems, and a whole host of things that it would be good for D&D to address. Um,
I would just like to point out that I won D&D with a non-violent character.
yeah.
I gave peace a chance. Yeah, just again for people that don't remember or weren't there for that. It's that character that I mentioned with the saint and peace and nonviolence and poverty. It was you essentially could not kill, but you couldn't be killed. That basically was it. And the idea was you were supposed to like avoid fighting, which again is tough in a combat oriented game, especially when you're in a group. But there was nothing to say that you couldn't incapacitate things with non-lethal damage. So again, you're like 12-headed celestial hydra. I bite it with non-lethal damage. I like nom it to death. I like squeeze it till it's unconscious, you know. And that character got so bad that I would have to just straight up Scooby do it, where I'm like, well, I'm gonna go look over here. You guys go see if the dragon's in there, because you couldn't just kill. You couldn't let anyone else kill either, which quickly becomes a buzzkill. So
Right.
you're like, I'm gonna check over there, and you guys go do this. It's there's I've played some systems that have systematized role play. Hill Folk. Have you played any Hill Folk, by
I
the
haven't
way?
played any Hellfolk. No.
With somebody with your background in improv, I think you would enjoy it. It's definitely worth looking into.
Yeah.
Um, Ash Minnick, my dear friend, lives for Hillfolk. The stream they just did in Demian's Gate was a Hillfolk stream.
Cool.
Um, it's got a fairly ingenious system of like cards, but you call scenes. The players are your. It is all role play is a collaborative art, but Hillfolk especially so, where you're like, all right, you guys are on the way to see the king, and it's like, I want to stop and talk to the princess. And there's a mechanic where they can cash in abilities, essentially. You know,
Yeah.
I'm mixing metaphors here.
Mm-hmm.
But you're like, I'm gonna have a scene where I go talk to the princess. And you're like, I mean, okay, but now we're here talking to the princess now, you know, and then they get to somewhat define where it's like, I get there and she's upset, you know, and it's like, well, what's she upset about? And it's like, she's upset because she thinks her father killed her prize horse and she doesn't know why. Oh, okay. And then we're into it.
Yeah.
Um, I think, the counterpoint to that, my challenge with Hillfolk is it was completely not capable of when it was time to fight to simulate that, because it was like this like deck of cards, right? And I
Right.
think the enemies are like green, yellow, and red level enemies. And
Mm-hmm.
to defeat a red level enemy, it's something like, there's 2 cards in the deck that can let you do that. But if you literally do not draw those cards, like if those are the last 2 cards in the deck,
Yeah.
you
You're.
know, yeah, you're kind of out of luck and you're in for a long day,
Whew.
So that wasn't because it's so rewarded the narrative aspect of it. Um,
Well, I think that that's a big thing too. Everyone's looking for different things from games, and I think that like, okay, you look at systems that a game like D&D focuses on, and the level of attention to detail and care in terms of design that is put into spells, damage, weapons, initiative order, actions, and combat. Clearly, the game emphasizes that tremendously. And you compare that to like your skill list, which is an extremely simplified concept. Even though in a normal game of D&D, you're going to be coming back to your skills over and over and over again. Your skills are going to be all, look at something like how intimidation is resolved, where it's
mhm,
just like, hey, I'm going to set a DC. You're going to roll a die. If you hit it, you hit it. If you don't, you don't. Versus the complexity with which like a sword fight is resolved, right?
mhm,
And you can look at that and be like, well, clearly the game favors this manner of resolving problems over another manner of resolving problems based on what it has put its attention to. And I think there's part of me that agrees with that, especially when it comes to things like stealth, where you're like, even stealth is an element where you're like, this is a huge part of adventures and storytelling is like sneaking, and the system is really really simplified for how important this is in most
mhm,
stories and how often PCs attempt it. Like, this is really, really critical, and the game is not putting as much mustard on this as it is on combat necessarily, right?
mhm,
Um, it'd be cool to see in another edition of D&D, again, amongst a whole host of things to address that I think are really important. To see if that, that one small, and the scale of things, a smaller issue, but like if that could be addressed, that would be great. But I think additionally to that, there is a danger involved in that, which is like the other side of the coin for me is the kind of less is more approach,
mhm,
where like, yes, it is true that the game obviously cares more about combat than anything else because that's where all of its attention is going. On the other hand, I'll make 2 other points. One of which is some players, and I would include myself in this, are looking for games that are overwhelming, that have their systems be overwhelmingly diegetic. Like, the rules and abilities and all that stuff are for the most part supposed to exist as well in the world of the characters. And an example of a non-diegetic rule is if my character has a spell they can cast and the character is aware that they have that spell and they know the name of the spell and they know what it does, that's a diegetic ability. I, the player, am aware that my character can do it and my character's aware that they can do it. When you have games that have non-diegetic abilities, it's something where, maybe like I as a player can pull a card that makes me go like, I would like to initiate a scene where me and another character get in a fight. We're mad at each other just to have a story thing happen. Well, my character doesn't want to get into a fight. That's me as a player having an ability where I'm like, I kind of want to stir some shit up right now. for people that love those kind of games, awesome, more power to you. For me, that's not necessarily the experience I'm looking to have in a game. I'm trying to get as lost in the world of the story with as little meta thinking as possible, and don't necessarily want to throw down non-diegetic abilities. And the second thing I would say is myself and my brother and some of our close friends redesigned our LARP camp's magic system. And we're, really crunchy nerds. It was so crunchy, Dave. We dove into it. We're like, new abilities. We made a whole new fourth class called the Artisan. It was like mages and clerics and artisans and rogues and all this stuff. And we finally got to Warrior. And we were like, okay, Warrior doesn't have any abilities right now. You just get a foam sword, right? There's no abilities. You get a sword and you go try to kill people. And we were like, but that's so pedestrian. Shouldn't we design? And what happens is you go like, shouldn't we design this? But really the motivation to do that is we're game designers. And so we want to get our little munchkin hands on something and just do stuff to it. And we designed all these abilities and we made that, like, you could be a barbarian, you could be that, you could be that. And then after a little bit of doing that, we all went, stop. Warriors have two abilities. The first ability is called Sword, and the second ability is always knowing what to do. that other ability, and we realized like the experience you're looking for from a warrior maybe isn't the like clicky, acidic resource management that a primary spellcaster gets. Maybe you're looking for a really intuitive, in your body play experience. And designing a system to facilitate that would be destroying that experience. So I think there is something on the other side of the coin to sometimes over designing a system for something that actually flourishes without as much of an overbearing system is a real part of game design as well.
Well, yeah, especially because one, a lot of that, it spawns unintended consequences, which is similar to what happened to 3.5. I do think the motivation of 3.5, though, was not plugging holes. It was publishing books and, just kept stacking layers. But I think it's another one of those fundamental differences between something like D&D and the World of Darkness systems, like what we use for Vampire, where what I explain to people is D&D is explicit. You can do what you can do.
Mm-hmm.
If it's written on your character sheet, it's an option. If it's not written on your character sheet, it isn't. If you have very narrative driven DMs, like I tend to be this way, where you're like, can I shoot him in the foot to trip him? By the book, not really. I mean, kind of, but not really, but I mean, me personally, I'm like, yeah, all right, let's roll it and let's see, we'll let fate decide if you can. But for the most part, you've got what you've got. Then you've got something like the World of Darkness, which is implicit, and is more amorphous in terms of what you can accomplish, where you've got strength and you've got brawl. So it's, can I, sure, I guess it'd be firearms or melee in this instance, but you're like, can I shoot him in the foot? It'll take 7 successes. Roll. I got 8. Cool, you took his toes off, because the system's built for that. But then like a third pillar is something like the outbreak system for Outbreak Undead, which is, it is overtly supposed to be a simulation. They're trying to capture on paper what real life is like, where if like right now you had to jump over your desk, do a barrel roll, come up and shoot somebody on the other side of the room, what are your real chances of doing that? I mean, I know you are an unchecked killing machine, Brennan Lee Mulligan, but for most of us, 2-3%, if I'm being generous, like if I'm being generous, 2% chance. But I think the more you attempt to be simulative of anything, the crunch multiplies exponentially, and the more you try to be theoretical, it sort of comes down.
Yes, I think that's very true. And it's all about what that play experience is trying to create for you. I think that for a lot of people, having a system, like I always try to check my preconceived notions about what a game is supposed to do, because like, am I looking for a role playing game that systematizes storytelling such that the game will be giving me prompts that are fundamentally narrative or like non-diegetic to like actions and phenomena in the world of the story? I'm probably not looking for that, but I also have, what, like 2 decades of like improv theater experience, and like went to school for writing, specifically like script writing and all sort of stuff. So it's like, oh, what if, like, it's kind of a no-brainer. Like the
You
fact that
don't
I
need
would,
the yellow exclamation mark over the quest giver there,
yeah, like I don't need Clippy, nor do I particularly want Clippy giving me pointers, right? Um, which is not to say that I'm not saying that like, oh, it's like it's not even necessarily about like whether you are good at storytelling or not. It's just about whether you have comfort in that. Like I'm comfortable telling a story, right? Um, and if you're a group of players that are coming to tabletop without that background, and you want to get to that level of like, I want to be having really charged, meaningful emotional experiences, I could see definitely that a game that showed you how to get there more explicitly would be an incredible resource. So I think it always comes back down to what is the experience you're looking for? How can the game that you're playing help you get there? For me and for a lot of my friends, I think that um, like, why do we as people who value and prioritize role playing and storytelling um, come to these systems that seem to prioritize other things? And there's a lot of games that have crunch like that, not only D&D, but you can think of a million different games that have that level of like combat crunch to them, or like you're saying with Outbreak, where it's like a lot of dedication to creating real world verisimilitude. It's a pen and paper physics engine, for lack of a better word, right? The reason we keep coming back to that is not because we like necessarily enjoy that the game seems to emphasize that thing, but rather it's like, cool, the game's taking care of that because we're taking care of this other thing. And I don't need necessarily to know how to have a tender moment with someone I'm playing with across the table. I've actually got that covered. I need to know, in this instance, how much damage Melf's acid arrow does. And like, that's the thing the game's taking care of. But again, that there is no value judgment in that conversation. It is completely dependent on what you are looking for at any given moment.
Yeah, I completely agree. It's, I've gone on record many times saying I think the reason why people play these games and why video games will never completely eradicate tabletop, even though I love video games, I've been playing it even longer than tabletop, is people want the opportunity to feel like they are at cause in the narrative, that their actions or their inactions have a major impact. And even though video games can give you that to a certain extent, no matter how good they get with the AIs, there's still always going to be a certain level of rails where it's like the king's like, will you go save the princess? Nah, actually, I'm not. No, I'm not.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, I'm about to break that leg off of the throne and beat you to death with it right now. It's like a video game can't compensate for that. And it is the system, I think, is secondary to being able to facilitate that level of immersion. And yeah, I think on a certain level, the person that has spent $5,000 on Warhammer armies is looking for a different experience than someone like me who is almost exclusively theater of the mind and pretty much everything. I think ultimately feeling like you are lost in this world and both your actions and inactions matter
Yeah.
is, why people keep showing up for them.
Yeah. 100%. I fully, fully, fully agree. And I think that is, it's funny because in terms of gaming, like, I actually am sort of the opposite, where I, of course, have played video games in my life, but there was a certain point where tabletop just kind of took over for me. And it is such a weird relationship, because I have felt at times like it's such a weird thing to play this game, to feel connected to other people that play this game, but at the same time, like I've been playing homebrew campaign settings since I was 10 years old, for overwhelmingly for the most part, and making these private worlds with your friends and telling these stories through this system. So it's this weird thing to be talking with people about this shared experience, where so much of that shared experience is completely intimate and sculpted and shaped by who were those 3, 4, 6, 7 people at that table for that story at that moment. It's a really I can't think of anything in the world like it. You know, the degree of you're right. Like, two people that play through Crash Bandicoot are have each played it in their own separate way, but they saw the same levels, they did them in the same order. And to then go to something like a tabletop role-playing game where two people playing in the same system maybe weren't even in the same world is like, yeah, like you're saying, being at cause. It really is like the story of the people who are telling it, which is a wild thing. It's really, it's unique.
Let me ask you something completely different, and this is just a mechanical crunch question. This is something that I had struggled with recently, and I wonder how you resolve
Mm-hmm.
when things like intimidate and persuasion are used against players. So without trampling on their own free will, you
Mm-hmm.
know, where you have, the illithid that is clearly evil, you know,
Yeah.
but rolls this like gigantic persuasion check. One, do you even have monsters roll? Because I usually don't have NPCs try and persuade other characters, but I've had many opportunities where characters tried to persuade other characters, and
Yes.
the dice say you listen to them, even though you as a player, I'm not here to tell you how to do what you do. So how do you personally adjudicate those kind of things?
I'm in the same boat as you. The only social skill I allow, and PCs and NPCs are lumped together, right? Whether it's a PC doing it or an NPC doing it, the only social skill I allow either PC or NPC to use on a player character is deception. That's the only one. I don't allow intimidation or persuasion, because if I did, the whole point of playing these PCs is that these people are exceptional and heroic. Like, if these people were persuaded, like, these are special individuals within the game world that they are in, because the story is kind of coming in and focusing on them. And if we were going to allow, I think you can allow random chance to affect the degree to which they are injured. I think you can allow random chance to affect the degree to which spells work on them. Those feel like story moments. But fundamentally, like, the heroes of a story being persuadable or intimidatable begins to, I think, attack the very root of why people play these games to begin with. Like, if you're playing a player character, you're supposed to be the one person who can't be scared into backing down. In my opinion. Um, the only reason I allow an exception for deception is because, uh, I think it's okay to cop to the fact that it's just about the feeling it creates at the table. When your PC gets intimidated or persuaded, you feel a loss of agency that corrodes the fun of the game. And I don't think you feel that when you get successfully tricked. I think there's lots of examples of heroes getting tricked that doesn't sap away from the core experience of being a heroic character. So
I
that's how I handle that.
I completely agree, because what kind of monster would drop a zone of truth on your main bad guy during episode 1 of your
Yeah, truly. It's it's really true. Yeah, I need my bad guys to be able to lie and trick people. But and also, I think what's interesting is the reason I allow deception is that deception is one of the few things that has a paired ability that can thwart it, which is insight.
Mhm.
Persuasion and intimidation don't have, there's no like willpower skill that
Yeah.
allows you to not be persuaded or scared. So there's something that feels more fair about me rolling deception against someone's passive insight, where in a weird way it's like, well, if you really didn't want to get tricked, you could have sunk an expertise or a
Yeah.
proficiency into your insight score and negated some of this. But
Can I?
with yeah, go for it.
No, I interrupted you. Please proceed.
No, I was just going to say, but with persuasion and intimidation, there isn't really something you roll against. It's just sort of a DM setting a DC that they feel like is fair in their mind, but it's not really it's not a contested roll. In other words,
There are two mechanics that I truly hate in D&D, truly in my heart hate. One of which has gotten better, which is the attack of opportunity. Because I actually do know how to fight. I have advanced martial arts training, and the idea that you get a free lick on me just because I got close to you, even though we both know we're fighting, was always stupid to me. And even the fact that you get a free lick on me, even when I'm leaving, is still stupid. But I get that I'll meet you in the middle on that one. You know what I mean? That it's like it's to stop people from just constantly hitting and running. So I'm like, I'll give you a pass on that. I've attack of opportunities in their current iteration are palatable. The other thing, passive insight, passive perception, things like that, because I hate the idea that you can be worse at something by trying, because either if your passive is too high, you walk into the room and you're like, oh, you see the murder weapon under the couch. Well, that's not fulfilling. But then if it's like, well, I look for the murder weapon, roll, 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 and it's less than your freaking passive, you're still like, but you don't see it, Like I just
totally. It is a funny thing. The passive ability scores are interesting. I mean, the obvious design motivation for them is the idea of can there be a number that means I don't have to ask you for, like, it prevents that awkward DM thing of like, hey, no one be worried at all, but if everyone could give me a perception check, it's like it's
would you
nice.
like to detect traps? Nope, there's not any. Thanks. Yeah.
Exactly. But the other so that's nice. The other thing too is I do get the kind of reasoning behind, like, okay, all of these skill checks we determine by one roll of the dice, performance, persuasion, arcana, history, whatever, right? But when it comes to stealth or like an investigation or whatever, sometimes we introduce twice the amount of variability in these contested rolls or whatever. Like, what's like, it shouldn't 1 degree of variability be enough to indicate the vagaries of chance, right? So I do understand that reasoning to it, but you're right that it does problematize trying. The one thing I do love is that's why I love reliable talent, which is the rogue ability, the high level rogue ability that means roll, and if you roll lower than an 8, you got an 8. I love that because that solves the problem you're talking about of like, oh, I should try because maybe I'll roll high, and if I roll low, I didn't really roll that low. That's awesome, and I feel like that kind of gets to the problem you're talking about. But it is interesting that that's relegated just to rogues.
Yeah. Well, because even if you do, because on occasion I've done it where it's like, uh, you catch something out of the corner of your eye, roll, roll, roll. Oh, it must have been nothing. But they're like, but it wasn't nothing. You
It
know,
was something. It was
you're like, you're
something.
like, you're like, now I'm gonna take 10. Now we're standing here the rest of the day. Pull all the drawers out. It's just that's but clearly you and I could spend the entire day just nerding out about the game because we haven't even talked about like you and your life and your career. But perhaps we should we'll play at least a smidge of the old Dungeons and the old Dragons now, and then we'll talk a little more about you here in a moment. So, who have you brought to join us today?
I have created a truly ill-advised character.
I like where this
Um,
headed.
A truly ill-advised character. Like this is so I rarely get to play. This is a 20th level D&D character. And like with any 20th level wild character build, there was a moment in building this where I had to go, is this character meaningfully better than just a straight 20th level wizard? but my character today is Peregrine. They are a 20th level Aarakocra, multi-class, uh, uh, 12 levels of Way of the Shadow Monk, 5 levels of Circle of the Grassland Druid, and 3 levels of Scout Rogue. They are an unarmed like the way I see this multi-class of like monk druid rogue is that they are like they have very high dexterity and wisdom, as you would expect. They are like a spiritually attuned, both through their druid levels and their monk levels, like defender of like the wild places and also like the free peoples of the world. And the build on them is all about going very fast. They're a very fast character. It was like a little bit of a crunchy, fun character day of just designing a very fast character. Um, uh, their normal fly speed is 80 feet in a movement. And as a rogue, they have cunning action, which means that they can dash action, bonus dash action, movement for a easy breezy, beautiful 240 feet per round before doing any of their magic shenanigans that they know how to do.
It's a big part of this is I'm always fascinated by why people choose to play what they play, especially when given the infinite tapestry of level 20.
Mm-hmm.
I think you, like me, are sort of at the point where you've just played a lot. So, it is easier just to kind of theory craft corner cases. But what made you decide now? Because, like you said, you don't get to play often, and especially not at this level. What made you decide that, like, the super quick boy was the thing to do?
I think that I was like, because I knew that we were doing a one shot, and I think in a the corner cases are the most fun for a one shot because when you're embarking on a longer campaign, you have other PCs and you're trying to create something complementary. So
Hmm.
there's a certain degree of crunch factor where I'm just like, oh, what an interesting character build that it would be fun to see that I probably wouldn't want to commit to playing
Hmm.
for 100 episodes of an actual play, right?
Hmm.
To sort of create a fun build to engage with. Um, it just sort of there's something again there's something fun to me about a character based in this like corner case, like can I make this build work, uh that I just really liked. And also I'd been reading some stuff online about different speed builds,
Hmm.
and um I wanted to do a speed build. A lot of the speed builds were the fastest you can go in a single round.
Hmm.
And also, there's just a part of me that you just get a thing in imagination. And I was like, oh, what about a cool, like tawny grassland eagle Aarakocra who would get to travel unarmed? They just kind of look like a pilgrim. Um, so that kind of classical, they almost have that like paladin vibe without having any paladin levels to them,
Hmm.
but are also much more like centered and wisdom based. And that idea of I don't know, I just had this idea of this cool heroic eagle person who uh, could kick a bunch of ass and could fly real fast and could, and this dude gets up to 83 miles. I calculated it gets up to 83 miles an hour at top speed, and I was like, I want a character that
Nerd.
can
I've done it.
I've done it. Yeah, I wanted a fast bird boy, so I made him.
Well, let us ease into the world of this fast bird boy. Is Peregrine. You find yourself at dawn sitting by a cool mountain stream flowing through a clearing that last night you were flying overhead in your travels and looked like as good a place as any to put down for the night. And now you've awakened to greet the sun as you often do in a little bit of prayer and meditation and connection with the land before you move on. And as you sit there letting the sound of the wind and the trees wash over you, the babbling of the brook, the slight sound of a bird singing echoing somewhere off in the wilderness, and just feeling like all is right with the world, you hear, shh, shh, shh. No, you be quiet. No, you be quiet. Shh, shh, shh. No, he's gonna hear you. No, he's gonna hear you. No, shut up. Shut up. Shut up. You shut up. Shut up.
I stand up from meditation, doing some, very acrobatic stretch that involves my wingspan. I perceive mischief makers nearby in the grass. Your suspicions are correct. I have heard you. Speak now.
Peregrine, give me a perception check.
Ooh, Dave, you didn't want to do that. You didn't want to ask me for that.
Just right down to it. Right down to it.
That's gonna with a 12 on the die. That's gonna be a 27.
Your boots are tied together. You've yet to move. You've yet to trip, but the laces are definitely tied together. And you hear, no, it's gonna work. It's
gonna. I'm going to. I'm going to look down and just kind of smile that this has happened because I'm clearly not reading too much malice from this. I'm going to smile and say, mischief makers, I cannot see the reason you have bound arguably the least significant of my limbs. And I do have 6 of them, and I'm going to flap up into the air. And I go, the time has come for you to share in your jest with me. Reveal yourselves.
I told you we should have tied his wings together. But how are we going to tie his wings? His wings don't have any laces.
I'm going to cut the laces. May I make another perception check to see if I spot these?
Absolutely, you can.
Awesome. I'm also going to just check real quick if I have any kind of reveal yourself stuff.
You have a lot of options.
I have a lot.
That's the joys of multi-class level 20.
Exactly. I'm going to go ahead and let's see here. I'm also going to throw out here that I do have a magic item called Eyes of the Eagle. So I think I'm going to put on these this intense glass lenses, crystal lenses mask over my eyes, sort of like sunglass looking a little bit.
I know what you mentioned it briefly in passing, but what does Peregrine look like?
Peregrine looks, he wears the garb of an acolyte. So he dresses in not just plain clothes, but particularly plain clothes, coarse fabric, kind of the ascetic vibe. He is sort of pointedly unarmed. He might have a carving knife for food and stuff, but has no other visible weapons on his person. He has a small rucksack with water skin and some other kind of stuff like that. The 3 magical items he carries with him He has the only sort of piece of clothing that sort of stands out is he has a magical belt around him
Mhm.
that has like a large amulet style belt buckle. Also has like a holy amulet around his neck. He has the eyes of the eagle. That belt is a belt of hill giant strength, and then he
Mhm.
also has an immovable rod, but that's just tucked away in his rucksack right now.
Mhm.
Uh, and in terms, because his strength is magically created, I don't think he looks brawny. I think
Mhm.
he looks, uh, he has a sort of like eagle looking vibe to him, but it's not a big harpy eagle intimidating thing. He looks
Mhm.
like fast. His beak is very like long and pronounced. He has those intense kind of golden eyes, but is otherwise pretty sleek looking. There's not a lot of ruffle to his feathers. This dude looks
Mhm.
like very aerodynamic.
Mhm.
Um,
And
uh,
what was that perception to see if you could spot who's talking to you?
29.
In the grass. It's roughly how tall is Peregrine?
I'd say he's like 5'8".
Yeah, Aarakocra usually aren't huge.
Yeah.
This is probably about knee deep, thigh deep grass, that
Mhm.
grows kind of along the shore.
Mhm.
You see two small pairs of eyes that are very much like flitting around, and they sort of like move towards each other and then they move away. They're very restless as they're moving around. And is with a 29 that is 30 is an impossible task, so you can see them quite clearly. They are very little. They are probably 8 inches tall, maybe 10 inches. It's tough to get a bearing on them. They have blue skin and long white hair, and they're wearing tiny little golden armor with little swords in their waist. But they're both like very curiously looking at you. And through the wonders of technology, I can send you a picture of exactly what they look like there.
Oh, beautiful. Let's see what these little fellas look like here. Um,
And they like sort of like look at you like briefly, and then they like kind of like pat each other and like look back at you, and they're like, "Shh, I told you that we should have like tried to figure out a way to tie his wings together. Now he knows. Look at that's okay. Nobody can't see us. Nobody can see us. We're too fast. We're too fast. We're too fast."
the gleam of your armor catches the sunlight in a most resplendent way, young masters.
Do, do you see us?
I can, though
How
you
many
wish.
fingers am I holding up?
Uh, 4 on the one hand that you're showing.
How many on the hand that was behind my back?
Uh, um, I'm going to. I'll make a perception check.
Yep. Let's
Um,
see.
It's only a 25, so I don't know if I can see how many he's holding up behind his back.
It looks. You feel like it's three.
I'm getting a hunch that it's 3, but I can't verify that.
The moment you say it's three and I can't verify that, this thing is out of the grass and is standing on your shoulder, like right there.
Oh, hello, little friend. Uh,
How did you know that I was holding up three fingers? No one can ever guess that I'm holding up three fingers.
uh, it is not for me to question the motions of my own intuition. I saw that you were holding up 4. I figured it wasn't going to be 4 again. You have a limited number of fingers on that hand. 3 felt like a wise and prudent guess, I suppose.
While this is happening, a second one that looks identical to the first one is tugging at your belt, trying to make your pants come down. Like very like trying to figure out how to like unbuckle the belt of hill giant strength. Like looks up at you for a second, like,
Uh, could I make a grapple check against this young friend? Not trying to cause any harm.
"Mhm."
Um, um, that's going to be a 25.
Let's see. It is small and it is quick, but not quick enough. And you grab it instantly, and it's like, ah.
Hold the little guy up. Friend, I would never dream to disrobe you of your wonderful armor. Let us say that we exist in accordance, you and I. I shall leave your clothes alone, and you mine.
All right. right, you've got a deal. You must be pretty quick, but are you this quick? And it immediately like would have run in a way that you recognize is incredibly fast, but not quite fast enough. It's like, this is problematic. Yes, this is new to our experience.
I
Hmm.
see.
The one
Yes.
that is on your shoulder walks like very much into your eye, Peregrine. So, even though it's maybe 6 inches tall, it looks like a full size person. And it's like, what is your name, strange traveler?
My name is not for you to have, member though you are of the fair folk. You may call me Peregrine for our time spent together.
Hmm. A man of mystery. I like mysteries. And you see, it's to you, Peregrine, you're so used to existing in this place of speed. You see, even as you're looking at it, it does like shimmer slightly, like it's never quite still, and turns and kind of like runs along your shoulders to the other side.
Mhm.
That again, your brain is capable of processing, but you realize to most people it would look like they just vanish and reappear. But
Ooh.
you can see the individual motions that they, as they sort of like run past and then stand on the other side, like
Mhm. I love these little dudes. I'm going to laugh deeply with a kind of like hearty, but also that bird way, like shrieking laugh, like well. And I'm going to. I don't want to keep this one grappled, so I'm going to place him respectfully on my shoulder next to his other friend.
as you
Um,
go to like he very much had like whipped around and was like pushing with his legs against your hand to try and get away. But yeah,
uh, I say, uh, well, friends, it is a lonesome time traveling the grasslands and in an attempt to keep them safe and free. I find myself not displeased at your company. I hope that my thwarting of your trick has not left you heartbroken.
they sort of look at each other for a moment and they're like, flying is cheating. Yes, if you had just gotten up to walk, we'd have had you.
It's very rare for me to get where I'm going by walking. You seem to have a low opinion of the majesty of flight. Have you ever flown before?
They like, well, we have tried it on occasion, but it always proves to be too slow. Like,
Ah,
watch, but gaze upon our significant speed and be amazed, Peregrine. And they do both immediately like run, and they are incredibly fast, but you
mhm,
can see what they as they run down your leg and untie your shoes almost in an instant. It is like, whew. I mean,
mhm.
restore them to their
They're
normal state.
proper.
Yeah.
Uh, uh,
And
uh, my goodness, quite speedy indeed, young masters.
we are quicklings. We are the fastest creatures in the forest. We're so fast you did not see our 18 friends.
Let me make a perception for their 18 friends.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Please do.
That's going to be a 32.
There's just the two of them. You're 100%. There's just the two of them.
I'll go. My goodness. It seems that your 18 friends are so gifted at the art of vanishing that they may have never existed at all.
You see, the other one turns and looks, and he's like, "Oh, I think maybe we lost them in the woods. Oh dear. Well, in that case, we will travel with you now. You may have the pleasure of our company." And the first one says, I am a Rastro. This is my brother Filio.
Orastro, Filio, it is a pleasure and an honor to have your company. Um, if you don't mind, I know that you are not necessarily the greatest fans in the world of flight, but For my responsibilities to keep these lands safe, I would ask that you accompany me to the air, if it pleases you.
They stop and they're like, allow me to confer with my brother for a moment. And you see they like they move away from you and they're like go talking back and forth, motioning, and then they like, look up and they're like, we accept. Although we will have to choose how we will ride upon you. Do you have a fitting compartment or pouch that we might fit in comfortably? Or do you intend to simply hold us like a winged brute?
No, I would never dare hold you like a winged brute. There are some soft meadow grasses here near this stream, and I do have a very comfortable cowl. The hood of my clothes may make a fine perch for you as we take to the air.
Well, we shall assemble some grass here. Fear not, slow moving mortal. You may be astounded by our alacrity.
I will do my best to keep my beak closed and not let my jaw hit the floor upon witnessing this miracle of speed.
We will go on the count of 3. 1, and they're both gone.
My word, even your counting is faster than can be believed.
And you do hear some rustling along the grass, and in mere seconds, they do both have like some very large handfuls of grass. They're like, this should make a fitting platform by which we will survey the forest.
Mm-hmm. Uh, use let me see. So they make a little platform to survey the forest. I'm going to smile. I'm going to make sure that they're all safe back there in their little improvised, like how to and with that done, I'm going to take to the sky.
You immediately feel all 4 of their little hands like dig into your neck, holding on. It's just like
Yeah, I think right now I feel like because I have 80 times 3. Right now I'm going full speed, but without any magical help at the moment.
mhm.
So looking at that, times 10 times 60 divided by 5 to 8. So I'm flying 30 miles an hour without any magical help whatsoever. Um,
Whoa.
just taking off into the sky. When I get up to a place where I can really survey, and I can be because the eyes of the eagle make distance sort of not a consideration for perception checks.
Mhm.
So I'm going to get up way high to survey as sort of as many miles as I can, and I'm going to take the immovable rod out of my rucksack as I'm way, way up there. I'm going to click
Mhm.
it and just perch on it up in the sky on one foot and begin to just sort of calmly look around, survey.
Your tiny little minds are blown, Peregrine. You can feel, even though they never quite stand still, like they're very much like shaking, looking down, and they're like, everything seems so small.
The gift of distance, those things that were large become small. The sky offers a welcome treasure of wisdom to all who can embrace her. We see before us the big picture. Perspective is a welcome gift to any who tread the path of wisdom. It is important to remember that though you are smaller than I here, close together, we would each equally be specks in the far, far distance viewed from this height, and perhaps have more in common than we would at first see.
Filio, they've sort of Rastros on kind of next to one ear and Filio's next to the other. Filio just says, oh, the queen of air and darkness would never believe such things. She would probably not allow us up here if she knew.
I'm going to get serious for the first moment and I'll be like, is there one who goes by this appellation, the Queen of Air and Darkness, that would deprive of you your freedom to venture to the sky if you so wished.
They both look at you for a second and they go, he wants us to believe he doesn't know about the Queen of Air and Darkness. Yeah, that's a good one. You're putting us on again. You shouldn't joke with someone that you could let plummet to their doom.
I would never allow you to plummet to your doom. Frankly, I can fly faster than you can fall. Uh, and I'm gonna get like some little rations. I'll take some like dried berries out and like hand them to the little dudes. Snack? The long flight up here.
Oh, well, yes, thank you. And start biting into it. And after it's like a blueberry that's the size of his head, you know? And he's like, well, yes, the Queen of Air and Darkness is the ruler of these lands. This whole forest, everything the eye surveys is hers. And they turn and they look, and for the first time, you're high enough they can see beyond the forest.
Mhm.
And Filio says, oh, but what of the things that are beyond the forest? I didn't know there was a world beyond the forest.
There is a vast and wide world, vaster than any can contemplate. No ruler may claim to hold dominion over it all.
Mm, but, Peregrine,
Yes,
the the Queen of Air and Darkness claims to hold rule over it all.
it is a false claim.
it's
um,
it's okay. Um okay, can uh oh, and the Restro just sort of puts a hand on his brother's shoulder and is like, might we make a small request of you, my friend?
by all means, make your request.
Could you possibly protect us from that? And you see coming up from the forest what looks like a jet black humanoid. They have long, shadowy wings and a sword in their hand, but they're just like looking up at you completely straight faced as they come up from the forest.
I'm going to, uh, yeah, I'm going to click the immovable rod and start hovering here using my own wings. And I'm going to tell the two brothers, I'll say, get deep into the hood, stay hidden.
It's a forest guardian. We're never supposed to leave. I think we've ventured too high.
I would like to, at this point, cast haste on myself, if I might.
You feel, Peregrine, everything slightly slow down. Even the like nonstop, almost glitchy movement of these two slows down to the fact that you see they're almost just sort of like rocking and wringing their hands, which before very much was like they're
Hell
just
yeah.
they just look small and nervous. And you see this black figure sort of shimmers for a second and disappears and appears right behind you with a sword up.
Okay. I'm being openly attacked in the sky. Incredible. If this thing is initiating violence, then let's go, baby. Let's do it.
Give me initiative just for, I guess it's gonna, at least for which one of you goes first, because then it's kind of you it.
That's a 16 for me.
That is, well, let me see if that's enough for you to go first. Um, that is actually, that is not actually.
Ooh.
You see it's like flying, blink, and it comes crashing down with this sword. What is your AC?
18.
And it does smash into your back. You can see
Ooh.
it was specifically aiming for the hood when it crashes down with the sword, and
Oh
it
my God.
hits you for 22 points of damage and another 27 necrotic damage
Ooh.
radiates through you as this like gigantic sword crashes down. And now that it's close and you can see it, it's got just a jet black featureless face with just two burning red eyes.
Jet black, featureless face, burning red eyes.
Mhm.
Um, okay. So I am hasted right now.
Mhm.
Um, how did I clock how fast this thing was moving? Um,
I will
prior.
I will give you perception as a free action because this is the world you live in. So we'll see if you noticed.
That's going to be a 32 perception.
Pretty quick. It's about 120. It was, I mean, it was coming with some heat and then basically disappeared and reappeared behind you and hit
Okay. Okay. Awesome. 120, right?
you. Mhm.
Um, okay. I am going to um fly. So it's first of all, it's closed with me, correct?
Yeah, it's like right next to you.
Okay, dope. Um, here's what we're gonna do, baby. Get ready for this.
Hmm.
Um, uh, when you use the dash, make me.
I
Um,
just want y'all to know. I told Brent, I'm like, just all this goofy stuff, just do it, just stack it up. Don't even think like, oh, it would be wrong of me to do X. I'm like, no, do it, do it, do it,
do
do it,
it,
do
do
it,
it,
do it,
do
do
it.
it.
Okay. I am going to um uh so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to take two attacks.
Hmm.
Uh, um so yeah, I will take the attack action.
Hmm.
Um oop, lost a die there. That's going to
Sword Ice
be
don't exist.
um that's going to be first a 17 to hit and then a 22 to hit.
That is one miss and one hit.
Okay, this is
Is
not
you this is your unarmed strike, right?
correct. Yes.
You reach out to punch this thing and you feel almost your hand just get lost in the shadowy mist of what it's made out of, but the second one finds solid purchase on something.
Awesome. Um uh cool. That's going to be 11 points of damage.
Hmm.
Um and then what I'm going to do, I have the mobile feat. So there
Hmm.
this creature cannot take attacks of opportunity on me. I am going to I'm going to bonus action dash, movement dash, haste action dash, and
Hmm.
I'm going to be, let's see here. Hold on. Um, hold on one second.
No
I'm
problem.
no, I'm good. This is some fun math. Uh,
Hmm.
uh, 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 um, so take those attacks on it. My AC also, sorry, my armor class is now 20, by the way.
Okay.
Uh, and um, I'm going to take those two attacks and then be 480 feet up in the air above the creature.
And you just hit whoa from Resto and Filios.
Mhm.
You see the moment you take off, it out of nowhere just produces a black bow and shoots an arrow right after you that you're like just basically outpace as
Hell yeah.
it can't quite catch up, and it looks at you with those same red eyes, and
I succeed on my concentration to maintain haste, by the way.
you see it hits its wings and comes after you with what would be supernatural speed under different circumstances. And again, after it flies a certain distance, disappears and reappears, but still about 120 feet away from you. And at the last second pulls out, it takes another one of those shots. This one misses, but you realize it is in range. But right now it's 120 feet away.
Awesome.
Mhm.
Cool. There are lots of ways to hurt this character. This is not a broken 20 level character. Far from it. Fighting me in the sky was a mistake. And I'm gonna make this thing pay. Cool. I got time, baby. So we're gonna do 3 more movement actions.
Mhm,
Haste, bonus, regular movement.
mhm.
And actually, what we're going to do is the first thing I'm going to do is use my action to cast Long Strider, just to be goofy. Get that extra 10 feet of movement. So now, hold on. So now my movement is 90, which means it's actually 180. So I'm 120 feet away. And now we're going to go 180 times 3 plus 120. I am now 600. I cast Long Strider and I'm now 660 feet above this creature. Probably now like a full quarter of a mile to half a mile up into the sky. Oop, sorry, I think you're muted. No, one moment.
Yeah, I really was muted. Sorry.
No
And so you wouldn't hear me like snuffling and snorting over here. Yeah, you're high. It's starting to get cold now. And you hear Rastro and Philly over like, like gathering the grass up, and they're like, "Oh, my friend, the forest guardian is a fearsome foe. He is the queen of air and darkness's champion." And Peregrine, you hear as black storm clouds start forming all around you. You're high enough up that you're in the storm. And you see this thing just holds its hands up as a and
Awesome.
I mean, it's pursuing you at 240 feet, which again, in a sane world, is very fast. Not fast enough. And oh, sorry. Let's see. It's you notice actually, hold on one second here.
No worries.
Yeah, it's currently you're so high up that it's already getting chilly, but as the clouds start to form, you feel a cool breeze picking up. Like soon this is not going to be any fun up here.
Okay.
Although, and you were, what would you say, 680? It's gone 240, so it's still a ways off. I mean, it's trying to come after you, but it's still some distance.
Okay. How about can I make a perception check to see if there is a meaningful chance, like looking at the weather, do I get the idea that it would be safer for me to try to fly above the weather level? Because your boy has no fear about going to Boeing 747 levels and just getting out of the weather layer. But if I feel like that's not safe to attempt to do that, I can try to re-engage this monster. Do I have a sense of one way or the other what's better?
Well, I will give you nature because that's this is a world you live in. So
Awesome. Nature check is a dirty 20.
I should say this out loud. I only play with one house rule that 1 always fails and 20 always succeeds, even on skill checks. I know that was a dirty 20, but I still want to say it out loud.
Copy that.
You feel like you could penetrate this storm. This is it feels like although it is being summoned magically, it is a normal storm. It's not like a storm of wrath or a tornado that is forming. It is just basically just a very cold winter storm being summoned. So yeah, you could probably punch through it.
Awesome. Let's go ahead. Any idea on the I'm trying to gather if the distance to it is great enough that I just need to haul ass, or if I have time to like cast some spells on the way.
You feel like you could probably cast a spell and get away because it's what do we say? It's 420 feet away because it was no 446. No, it went 240. You were 680. I'm numbering 440. Yeah.
Okay, it's 440 away. So 180 times 3. Oh yeah, I can clear it and still have an action left. So I'm going to do that. Let me think of what a fun little spell for me to cast might be. I'm having so much fun.
I appreciate that we've gone full Dragon Ball with this.
Oh, it's Goku. It's Goku o'clock all day, every day. Let's get good. There's something about having it's like, oh god, weather, and then it's like, wait a minute, let's get up, keep the answer. I feel like this character's answer is always higher. Go higher.
Always higher. Again, I'm like pathetic clown Kakarot. Yeah.
I'm so on that round. I'm gonna go ahead. Still have haste active, which is what we like. And I'm going to cast Cure Wounds at a 2nd level. And that's going to go ahead and restore. Ooh, these are not good rolls. Okay, that's all right. That's going to be 8 plus 3 is 11. So I'm gonna gain. I'm back to 85 health. And I'm gonna punch through the weather layer.
Isn't that the worst of like the squishy multi-class boys? Like my character Freely, who is a bard, paladin, warlock, sorcerer, even at level 20 has like 108 hit points. Like he's always just right around power word kill range.
It's horrible because you multi-class. When you multi-class, the temptation to make Constitution your dump stat just gets higher and higher. 13 Constitution is not doing you a lot of favors.
It's true.
It's very true.
Not when stuff hits hard, when it can hit. Yep.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. So I'm going to punch through the weather layer. Yes.
When you come up over the top, you look down, there is just this black swirling mass underneath you as you've gotten over the storm, and you hear the thunder crack, and you just hear is it possible for us to maybe just hit the rest of this out?
My dear brothers, yes, please sit the rest of this out. I am doing my best to keep you safe as I can. I am sorry.
Oh, sorry. No, please go ahead.
So you say, I am sorry that my actions have brought you into harm's way. Had I known that you were barred from leaving the forest, though I should have disagreed with it in principle, I should not have endangered you so recklessly, and I am sorry.
It's our own fault for not speaking up. And you smell a tiny, like something's burning, as they have set a tiny fire in the.
Are you making a small campfire back there to stay warm?
Well, we're trying not to die up here.
I'm going to do the selfless thing and take this fire damage, but please be mindful that it does not spread to the rest of my clothes.
Ooh, it wouldn't be a loss. It's not much of a robe anyway.
I'm a monk. Don't be so rude. They are plain for reasons of principle. Not I could if they're well, I like them.
You see a couple of arrows just punch up through the clouds, just missing wildly.
Okay. Awesome. I'm gonna gain some more altitude, just enough to stay out of range. But I'm like, I also am just waiting for this thing to catch up and punch through the clouds after me.
After as you go a little higher, you hear they're like, it's a little hard to breathe up here, is it? Oh, why does anyone do this? I don't understand.
I am sorry, my friends. I shall do my best to return you to the ground as soon as it is safe to do so. And I'm gonna wait.
You're watching from some distance. You very much see it coming, with its arms down and sword in hand, and its like face is still completely blank, like on you, coming upwards.
Okay, let's mess this dude. Let's mess this dude up a little bit. I will wait. Like I'm gonna wait for like an opportune movement, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
To the point where I can basically I'm gonna wait for a moment that I can dive and get to this creature in one of my movements.
Okay. You notice it does not teleport again. It just basically comes nonstop. So if you were going to charge it, you would have a chance to do so.
Let's go ahead and do exactly that. I am going to charge this thing moving 180 feet in my movement. Let's go action first. And I'm going to do a stunning strike.
Okay.
Let's go for a stun here. Make an attack. Ooh, that's only a 14 to hit.
Let's see. I do not believe that is going to be it. That is not enough to hit it.
No
Although
worries.
you don't don't lose your key point because you don't declare the stun until you hit. So
until I hit, that's right. Okay. I'm not going to be a cheese and try to get sneak attack damage. I don't have any allies that are helping me. Let's go. I'm just going to use my second attack again. This is like having all these abilities at 20th level that I have no familiarity with how to run.
It's wild when you start there versus like growing up with it. Like it's a lot. Yep.
Okay, that's going to be a 16 to hit.
That is also not enough.
Woof. Let's do extra. Let's do extra haste action is going to give me an attack now. That's going to be a 22 to hit.
That is enough, and with that, you could do your stunning strike.
I will do my stunning strike.
Let me just reread stunning strike because I said, we'll fine. What is the save it needs against your stunning strike?
I believe it's a Constitution saving throw DC 17.
You and you see sort of a ripple goes through it, and it sort of looks at you for a second, and its wings don't beat, and again.
Oh, lovely. So this creature is stunned. This creature is stunned now. What I would love to do is it's stunned until at the end of my next turn, correct? Is it possible to grab this thing as I'm trying to think if I can grab it as an attack or okay. So I'm going to
grappling is the attack action. So yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to flurry of blows to get these other attacks. Here's the athletics check, and I assume I get advantage because this thing is stunned, right? Okay. That's a natural 20 on the grapple, which actually is a 37.
So you tell me how you grab it. It basically is like imagine a shadowy angel, but it's kind of like stuck like this right now.
Let's go talon. I'm gonna go talons. So like grab him with feet. so that I can continue to punch this thing. And the goal here is I'm going to take this thing straight into the ground. How wide? I assume the storm is pretty enormous. Is there
5 miles? In fact, it's kind of like as far as you can see is the storm.
Okay. I'm trying to think of like I don't necessarily want to go back into like under the storm layer. Um okay, here's what I'd like to do. This is goofy. You let me know if this works. I'm going to take my last flurry of blows.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
I love the idea, like your talons like lock onto its arms, and you're like,
bam, bam. Yeah. Oh, I don't know if I rolled damage. I just did the stunning. So the damage overall for the round is is 20 damage for the round.
All right.
Over those 2 attacks. And I'm actually done with I'm whatever movement I have left, if any. I'm going to start taking this stunned creature up.
You're gonna even how you're not gonna let it fall to its death. You're gonna like pull it up more.
There's something I want to do to help it out. So I'm going to move up more. I know it's stunned, so I think it loses its next action.
Yeah, you take it up as far as you can. Yep.
On my next round, I am going to take the attack action again. That's a 27 to hit.
That is enough. Are you going to try and stun it again?
Try and stun it again.
I'm rolling it's got a not insignificant con, but I'm rolling terribly. So you kind of see a shit, and you notice out of the hood, you see Rastro and Filio have stuffed like hay into the sides of their armor, but both of them have kind of come forward while you're clawing on this thing and like come down your arms with their little daggers, and they're like, which means you now have allies in proximity to get your sneak attack damage.
Incredible. I'm going to
roll like a little layer of frost has appeared on both of them. They both look much bluer than they already were. Yeah.
Incredible. Gonna roll damage.
I don't know how hypothermia works on Fae, but they might lose some fingers after this. Who knows? But yes.
So just from hitting him, that's going to be 28 points of damage. As I just bam, 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 and then as I stun the creature again, stun this Fae Guardian, I'm going to use all 3 movement actions to basically barrel wheel in the sky and use the speed of my movement to hurl and like vault him down through the cloud. Yeah.
And you're like, they're like, and they both go get in the hood, and you can sort of see they're like pasted against the back of the hood as it's like whipping behind you while you're coming downward. Give me one last athletics check.
Awesome. Is this with advantage or?
Yes, this is with advantage. Hand to God. I rolled his grapple with disadvantage, and for the first time in my entire life, rolled 2 1s.
Oh no! Oh my God. That is going to be
wanted this to work. Fate wanted this to work.
Incredible. That's good. And also that is going to be a 36 from me on that grapple check.
You describe for me how you do this, because it works basically as well as it could ever possibly work.
Having stunned this creature and frozen its key in place, I still have my talents, am just haymaker walloping this thing in the head. And then with that haste, one flap, like, has like the like mist stream chemtrail things coming off the edge of the wings, like zoom up so that I can momentarily like frame myself against the disk of the sun, exult for a moment in the life-giving light of the sun above, and then full tuck wings, beak out, dive. And as we are just about to enter the storm, I flip, kick this thing hard enough to stop my own descent, very Dragon Ball Z, like bam, and to further its speed, cratering through the clouds towards the earth.
It it goes through the clouds so hard it punches a small hole short enough for you to see it go down into the trees, and then like a shockwave comes up and you see the trees shake and like birds all come out of the trees there. You do hear, oh, it's very nice. Yes, that was quite effective.
Thank you.
The clouds begin to part when their summoners, shall we say, concentration is broken along with everything else. And you hear, how dare you? How dare you raise hand against my champion? In out of the forest, in the treetops, you see the shadowy outline of a woman start to form. She's huge. She's 20, 25 feet tall, and stands up and looks at you and says, you would kidnap my subjects and destroy my guardian. You will be destroyed. And that's a good place for us to take a little break. So we'll do we'll do 8 minutes here. We'll come back at the top of the hour and get back in it, and it's gonna be fine. It's gonna be fine, Peregrine. Like, don't even worry about it. Like, it's nothing.
I'm not sweating it at all. You know what? No kings, no gods, no masters, and in this instance, no queens. The sky means freedom, baby. And if these little quicklings want to come hang out with me in the sky, they should be allowed to do so.
All right, we'll be back in a minute.
Go. Rock and roll. Take a little break.
Hello, and we are back with the man of the hour. Apparently, the man of 3 hours. It seems, Mr. Brennan Lee Mulligan.
Woohoo!
Now, normally, sir, we take questions here, and spoiler alert, we're talking to you from the past because due to the mysteries of scheduling, we had to pre-record this one. But I would be remiss, sir, if I didn't ask, because, you know, a lot of times I get hit up with people asking, you know, how do you get into the industry? How do you do this? Because, I mean, quite frankly, this is kind of a dream come true. My eyes keep casting over there because all my old second edition box sets are all over there. I say, after lamenting how hard AD&D was, I mean, there's literally stacked 4 feet high of box sets, which I all still love very much. How did you get into this? What was the path from D&D fan with a sliding piece of paper to calculate THAC0 to paragon of gaming success that you are now?
Woof. Well, that's a title that is certainly not self-conferred, but I am, much like you were just saying, only astounded and grateful that I managed to have clowned my way into being able to play this game for a living. It's a very circuitous route. Like, you know, I went the route of improv and sketch comedy. So after college, I started performing and teaching at the Upright Citizens Brigade Theater, which is how I got hired at College Humor, during a time where College Humor was looking for more long form content. And I'd been playing tabletop and LARPing since I was 10 years old and had never stopped. It had always been a huge, huge part of my life. But when I got to College Humor, it was this bizarre thing because I remember, you know, being a kid and LARPing and running games and stuff. And my mom would be like, this is so great. You'll be able to take these skills and apply them to sort of whatever you end up doing. No application necessary. The skills are one and the same. They are the exact skills that I'm here using. But it's very funny because it was College Humor had this new service called dropout.tv, plug. And was looking for lots of different like long form content. And so basically, you know, while I was sketching a pitch for an actual play show, I got called into the office by Adam Frucci, who was our then head of development, and he was basically like, "What do you think about doing an actual play show?" And I was like, "Are you kidding?" You know. So it was one of those weird things where I got the job through nerdy stuff because I was writing questions for Actually, which is like a nerd pop culture trivia show. But then this weird, like, a skill that I had probably the highest level of proficiency in my real life, but had always been in my back pocket as not a way you can make a living, suddenly had an opportunity to come out to the fore because of this weird confluence of circumstances. And it's been really wild. I mean, the Dimension 20 has been, as you said, like, it's a dream come true to be able to tell stories for a living, and especially like stories that are improvised and collaboratively told with your friends. And it's also very interesting because I feel like it's such a like, I have always felt, like, I did not come up through the various like play leagues of tabletop. I was this weird little homeschooled kid where my parents got me these books, and then I was just kind of playing in a bubble with my friends for 20 years with no connection to the larger like world of the hobby outside. I was very hermetically sealed in my little, LARP cluster in upstate New York. And then suddenly, because of College Humor, have been like, it is really bizarre. Like, I could never have guessed that this passion would come back full circle. It would have been impossible to predict. And it's a dang joy. It is a dang joy to be able to do it.
Because it's wild. It's like everybody's like, did you see this happening? It's like, no, literally no one did. Like, it's interesting to me because, again, I've been blessed to have these conversations with so many different people, and no two of us got here the same way, but in almost all of our roots cannot be duplicated. But before I give my little spill on how I feel about that, because I'm sure as often as people are asking me, how do you do it? How do you get started? I'm sure they ask it for you all the time too. So if you got somebody today that is like, Brennan Mulligan, how do I get into, having my life be telling stories, a life in the tabletop streaming space, what would you say to such a person, Ja?
What would I say to someone looking to get involved in the streaming actual play space? It's such a bizarre thing. There's a couple things that I want to like preface this with. One of them is very encouraging, and the other one is something that I feel like is an important disclaimer. I'll start with the disclaimer first, and basically, one of my most profound ideological and philosophical beliefs is a belief in luck, and I feel that there is a cult within like the American ideology that really doesn't like to chalk things up to luck a lot of the time. Call it, as someone who walks around with a good luck charm in my front left pocket at all times of the day, of all times of my life. Anytime someone who would be watching this at home as I give my advice on how to get started in this industry, there is a survivorship bias for advice givers, which is anytime someone who has found success in an endeavor is like, let me tell you how it works. It's sort of like, this is a very bleak example, but it's almost like people that have survived a plane crash being like, what were you doing that made you survive? You want to be careful in that circumstance not to be like, well, let me tell you, I've always known how to sit in airplanes that are crashing the perfect way. Where it's like, let's acknowledge the degree of chaos and variables outside of your control. So I want to say that everyone should take my advice with a grain of salt. I'm a dum-dum and I don't know what I'm talking about. That being said, My path was, I moved out to LA when I was, 28 or 29 years old. I was broke as a joke. I was missing some teeth. That's not a lie. Um, I was having a rough time and applied for a job at College Humor and didn't get it. And, when you're doing anything in those creative endeavors, you have to be really careful about mythologizing people that become overnight successes, because anyone I know that the people I know that really work and have careers and bodies of work that they're proud of, worked their ass off under really adverse conditions for a long, long time. Those overnight success stories are very rare and extremely not representative of the vast majority of people who find careers in creative work. But also on top of that, I would say that for people that are looking to get involved in this industry, um, there are parts of every industry, creative and otherwise. It's true in tabletop. It's true of things beyond tabletop, where things are being controlled by gatekeepers, and those are very powerful and very real. And that's in television, that's in movie making. That no industry is free from that, right? However, the tools and resources available to slip around that are not vast, but there are many, right? It's not like, oh, there's a million ways to make it without going through gatekeeping processes. But there are lower barriers for technological entry into this, right? You can find good recording equipment very easily. And I'm not saying anything people haven't heard a million times before, but it is possible at the very least to create meaningful work, whether that's in game design, whether that's an actual play, whether it's creating a story with you and your friends. The ability to create that work in a meaningful way is truly, like, those barriers are lower than they were 20, 30, 40 years ago, right? It doesn't necessarily mean that there's not a lot of like competition for attention and resources and dollars. There is, but it means that you can put work out there. And I would say that as someone that like was putting work out there for a very long time, like writing a web comic with my friend Molly and doing a lot of stuff like that. Nobody can guarantee a course of action that will result in success. And anyone that is saying they can guarantee you a set of actions will result in success is part of a like multi-level marketing scheme, or they're trying to take your money. Avoid them. Those are disingenuous people. No one can guarantee success. However, what you can guarantee, that I think is something that's often overlooked, is finding personal worth in creating art and media that you are proud of and having channels with which to share it. Even when I was living in New York and, was broke as a joke, the ability I had to create art with Molly, with other people, and put it in front of at least somebody, even though it wasn't sustaining me and wouldn't for many, many years, was incredibly meaningful for the soul. And so I think that the cool thing for people that are looking to get involved, the only advice I can give is seize the means of production. Seize the means of production. Do that politically as well, but seize the means of production. Also, logistically, like get mics and recording equipment and everything else. Seize those means of production and create work that is meaningful for you and your friends, because even though I can't guarantee that it will lead to success, it will lead to saving your soul, and you will create art that is meaningful. And believe me, like, there are points when you're creating art and media, and I include actual play in this, where you will create a story or create a piece of art that means a tremendous amount to someone else and changes their life way before you hit the mark of necessarily being able to sustain yourself full time with creative work. I remember the first message I got writing my web comic of someone that was incredibly generous with their time to write a letter that was so meaningful. And when I didn't have any money or security, and I had medical debt and I had student debt and all that stuff, getting that letter that like the art had meant something to someone meant more than I can possibly relate in this moment. So that's my long speech about people that are looking to get started in this industry. Get started, make amazing stories with your friends. The rewards from that will, if not immediately resulting in the ability to be a full-time creative person, which is a very rare thing that involves a lot of luck, will at the very least be meaningful in and of the ability to create something that is truly yours and a story that was meaningful to you and the people who created it.
Yeah, I agree with everything you said, and I'm yes-anding you. And again, you know, the people that have been with me when we've been doing these shows, welcome back, everyone. Understand that this is a speech that I give a lot. I agree with everything you said. I've been very fortunate. I've rolled some timely crits, but again, but you can move luck in your favor, because it is, you know, the harder I work, the luckier I get, because there are certain through lines of certain paths cannot be duplicated. You know, how you did it, how I did it, those doors are closed, you know, but new doors are opening constantly, and you can build your own doors. And it's you know, the harder I work, the luckier I get. And things like, you were still creating the content when you were broke, you know, when it was difficult, you were still doing it. You uprooted yourself and came to Los Angeles when you were nearly 30. You applied for the job at College Humor. There's the action, the forward motion. Because it's funny, I, as a person, I'm a believer. You know, like people like, you know, roll your eyes when you're like, oh, I carry a lucky charm. I'm all like, hey man, alters the reverberation of the universe. I'm with it. I believe weird things, and I don't mind that, because I know they're weird things, you know, like, in fact, it would be harder for me to tell you things I don't believe are possible. That is a much shorter list than what I do believe is possible. But two things I can tell you do not exist. And I had somebody like get upset with me and wanted to argue about this. The overnight success does not exist. Even if you think it's overnight, I guarantee you they've been putting in work on the back end. You know, I mean, Ashton Kutcher was like found as a model when he was working at like the freaking cookie shop or whatever. But you look at somebody like Justin Bieber, where it's like he got, you know, plucked up when he was 13 off of YouTube. But that kid been making music since he was 3. You know, it's like, it's just, you know, there's a work on the back end that you did not see that looks like an overnight success. And the other thing that doesn't exist is the self-made man. Everybody has help. Everybody has help. Somewhere along the way. You know, even if it was just the person that, you know, gave you a lift to the interview. You know what I mean? And, you know, it's in the past, and it's funny, you were saying 20, 30, 40 years. You know, I always tell people, as short as 5 years ago, definitely 10 years ago, the entire entertainment business was dictated by between 75 and 150 people. That if one of them didn't give you the rub, that casting agent, that director, you know, that music producer, you know, if there's one of these people wasn't like you, it wasn't going to happen. You know, the internet democratized all of that.
Yeah.
But now the hard part is being heard over the noise. Because, yeah, you can tell your stories and I can tell my stories, and so can literally everyone else, you know?
Yes.
So, but I mean, that's where you come back to things like that 1,000 loyal fans. The idea that you don't need millions and millions and millions of people to, you know, support you in your work. You just need like a core of very dedicated people. And, you know, that is enough to do what you love.
Yeah, it's an amazing thing. I mean, like, that's what we're definitely seeing in this moment of like, you know, the Dimension 20 is 2-hour episodes of really brilliant people telling wonderful stories, but it's a medium that a lot of people aren't familiar with. You know, like I always, it's so common.
Wild.
Yeah, it's like, it's, you know what I mean? Like, it's, you have to remember that there are a lot of people that don't engage with actual play. Like, you know, I go talk to like some friends of my parents who are in like a different generation of it and go like, oh, I play tabletop for a living. And they go like, what? How? Wait, what? Who? What? You know?
Yeah.
But that's the thing is, is I think the internet has democratized to a degree, and I think also there's an element of it is just as viable now. Like a lot of television shows, their recipe for being successful is we need to be 2 million people's fifth to 10th favorite show. And now you can make a living by like, we need to be 25,000 people's favorite show. We don't
Mm-hmm.
need to appeal to more than 25,000 people. We don't need to appeal to, it's like if we're their favorite thing, and what that ends up doing is I mean, like, you know, this is what's the old Zen parable about the Zen master saying wait and see. Like, we'll see what effects it has, but I think it moves us away from that thing of like lowest common denominator entertainment,
Mm-hmm.
because all of a sudden you are looking, like, if a thing doesn't speak directly to you, why wouldn't you search for something that does? You don't need to watch the and I think there's like effects that has, which you can say are good and bad, right? It's very interesting because it's like, on the one hand, like, you think about, I talked to my like folks about the like 70s and 80s with like event television, where it's like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
everybody watched that. And
Mm-hmm.
now it's like you maybe won't have any media consumption habits in common with someone else who lives next door to you, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe that's fine. I don't know. It's just a cool thing the internet's doing. You know, culture changes, civilization changes. It's an interesting development. But I totally hear, and I also, it's one of those weird things where, like, when you're talking about like the harder I work, the more lucky I get. It's a really funny thing because I obviously 100% agree with you. It's a very weird thing to. I think everyone has moments where they create cognitive dissonance in their own head. Like,
Mm-hmm.
it's very funny. My like relationship to the uh to the idea of like success, the American dream. What does that mean?
Mm-hmm.
Because on the one hand, I'm able to go like, oh, this is a sham. Like, class mobility has completely eroded in this country because of a lack of a social safety net. My politics are all about that. Like, you shouldn't have to kill yourself working to have basic dignity and healthcare and all this other stuff. What, this is a bad system. Also, cut to me at 24 making a pot of coffee at midnight to stay up all night working to hit a deadline that was self-imposed. And even when I was doing that, I would be like, Brennan, isn't this the thing you explicitly said you don't believe in? And I can only think of that there's like an old Brooklyn joke of the person going to the therapist, and being like, my brother's crazy. He has an imaginary chicken. He has this chicken that he's imagining. I can't get him to stop imagining this chicken that he's like hallucinating. And the therapist goes like, well, why don't you just tell him to send the chicken away? And the brother goes, well, we need the eggs. And there's this moment of like, of me being like, you know, like, oh, like, what it, like, this is a crazy, this is a preposterous notion of just like hard work and pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But then there I was at like 1 o'clock in the morning, you know, working my ass off and being like, I need to double down to realize this thing that I question the validity of, but also this is the only way it's going to work. If it's going to happen, it has to happen like this. So I
Well,
have, yeah.
I mean, if I could submit, I think here's the two things that made that different. One, it was self-imposed and, working to your own greater glory and, no external force, but you propelling yourself. And two, it worked, like it's my pace. Like I work harder now than I ever have in my entire life. I'm 7 days a week, man, 7 days a week. And I'm taking on new things all the time because I realize how improbable all of this was and how fleeting it potentially could be. Like I've gone on record multiple occasions. If I woke up and it was 2016 and none of this had happened, like this was all just a dream, I would be like, that seems legit, good and bad, because I mean, like, there's been some great personal things, but some existentially terrible things. If like that carrier wave just got collapsed and it was like April Fool's Day 2016, I'd be like, yeah, okay. I mean, all right, yeah, this all seems to be in order,
Oh yeah.
And so it's it I think the most important thing for my money is just stay in motion, man. Keep moving forward. Don't wait for a chance, take a chance,
Yeah.
because everything in my life that has gone well for me, I can trace back to me being willing to try something new and just open my mouth and say something, you know? Um,
I definitely agree with you. It's very, I find myself in this split consciousness a lot. Anyone who's familiar with me knows that I will always talk my way out of whatever point I'm trying to make, which is the curse of a philosophy major, of trying to like settle on a definitive take on anything. But I think there is an element of the type of advice you're giving where there are, when we're talking about success, it's impossible to extract the idea of success from the like extractive, exploitative, capitalist culture that we find ourselves in. And it's often the advice I find myself giving to people. It's on two different radio frequencies. It's on the collective and the individual. The analogy I'll make is one of like, it's like if we were in a Running Man or Hunger Games style death labyrinth where a laughing panel of aristocrats was sipping their champagne as we all like stab each other to death, and if for their pleasure. There would be, if I'm talking to an individual where they're like, what's the deal with how do I get by in the death labyrinth? There's always this split cognitive dissonance I have where I want to be like, well, okay, two things. Number one, the death labyrinth is bad, and we should be seeking to abolish that. Let's not lose sight of it would be better if the death labyrinth were not here. And some of us get together in this hidden cave where the cameras can't see us, and we're trying to organize and work on some of the death labyrinth. Also, if one of the weird rodeo clowns with a chainsaw pops out, take this shiv and stab them in this. It's like you're giving these two levels of advice at the same
that
time.
is the most reasonable possible advice of like, while we are striving for the superlative, let us not lose track of the current reality. I think that is the most valid worldview.
Well,
Also always stab the rodeo clown with the chainsaw first. He
yeah.
must be destroyed. Yeah.
We can get into why was the rodeo clown incentivized to come at you with the chainsaw, and maybe there were factors involved society, but don't let the chainsaw chop your head off. Here's a shiv, stab the rodeo clown, and then we're gonna get a free moment later, and we're gonna figure out how to take the whole death labyrinth down.
That manifests to me is when I talk about, not letting go of one branch till you grab a hold of the next one. Like people are like, I want to go full time into content creation. I'm like, maybe don't. Maybe don't. Success is not guaranteed, and it will not be quick. Like it won't. Like you may need to maintain your day job. You will need to maintain your day job, or like a way to sustain yourself until, things start to kind of kick in, and then you can make an easier transition. Otherwise, you don't want to just jump in face first, because if you are suffering and struggling, it is harder to be creative and enjoy the process. And enjoying the process is vital because it's going to take time.
A million percent. The entire first year that I was working at College Humor, I stayed teaching multiple UCB classes a week, even though I now had a 9 to 5. When I started working at College Humor, I was maxed out. I had an amount of credit card debt that was more than I was making in an entire year doing what I was doing. Like just like a truly, and even the amount of debt I had that was medical debt pales to what some of my friends have with like student loan debt. And but the entire first year I was working at College Humor, I didn't quit my day job. My day job had been teaching improv before that. I was doing like 50 or 60 hours a week because I was also like subbing. I was doing like 50 or 60 hours a week of working because I had never had a full-time job with that much security before. I didn't know if I was going to be successful at that job. And I thought, there's a chance that I won't get my contract renewed or whatever. So I was like, I am going to get out of debt. I'm going to work. I'm going to live off of my College Humor money, and all the money I make teaching improv in those extra hours that I'm burning through, that's going to go to getting me out of this debt. Yeah, don't quit your, like that. I think advice like that is really important, of like, don't be romantic about it. Like, again, it feels, there's a part of me when I look in the camera and be like, you gotta hustle, that has that thing of like, you shouldn't have to hustle. It's wrong that we all have to hustle. We could live in
yet
and yet hustle. Stab that rodeo clown.
I always remember, if you remember X-Men 2, which is an underrated movie, from the Nightcrawler sequence at the beginning, especially, there's a scene when Nightcrawler and Mystique are talking, and she's like, "You can look like anyone." She's like, "Yeah." It's like, "You can duplicate even their voice," and she gives him his voice, even their voice. And she's like, "Well, then why don't you just look like them all the time?" "Because I shouldn't have to."
Yeah.
You know?
It's great. It's great. It's
Yeah.
beautiful. I love that. Yeah, man. I mean, that's this is like a ton of better academia than I can like paraphrase here has been written about it. So one author referred to it as like the patriarchal bargain. Like from day to day, there are moments where we fight the system, and then there are moments where we are forced to comply. Like right after it's like people driving their cars to a climate summit and burning gas on the way there. Like every day you have to like make those things where it's like, okay, I can't fight this larger system in this moment right here, so I'm going to make that bargain with the larger system, and then over here I'm going to fight it. And everyone has to make those decisions because we're it is impossible not to. But
evolution is both incremental and spontaneous. There's
I love that.
I mean, like what's happening in the country right now. The Martin Luther King was right. The arc of history bends towards justice, and then a certain match gets lit in Minnesota. Why that one that day? It's like I was just reading. 3 other people were killed by the cops that day, but for whatever reason, that confluence of forces, struck a match that went off, and it could not have been predicted the day before, and cannot be predicted after. It's all of that is to say, if you're thinking about doing this, do it.
Yeah,
get a camera, get a mic, tell your stories, hone your craft, and enjoy the ride.
Hell yeah. I absolutely agree.
Speaking of enjoying the ride with the time that we've got, because again, you and I will nerd out indefinitely about this sort of thing. Peregrine, as you descend out of the sky and you see this shadowy woman standing up telling you that you will be destroyed, you hear 2 little voices. "Oh no, the queen of darkness and air has seen us. You've angered her. Put us down, friend, and go and save yourself."
I'm going to regard Rastro. It's Rastro and Filio, right?
Rastro and Filio. Yep.
Regard Rastro and Filio. Brothers, do you imagine me so craven that I would abandon you in this, the greatest hour of your need? I shall not abandon you here.
Filio comes out and sort of stands on your shoulder there, again, like right in your eye. He looks like a full-size person and is like, "You have given us a great vision of a world without boundaries, and we will never forget it. But you needn't lose yourself in battle with the queen. She is a tremendous foe."
I'm going to look down to the Queen of Air and Darkness, and I'm going to say, "I will heed your warning, friends. I will not seek to brawl with Her Majesty, the Queen of Air and Darkness, but I will see if there is something I may do yet. Your Majesty, Queen of Air and Darkness, I have here 2 of your stated as such subjects that I assume you wish for me to return to the forest. Do you dwell there in the forest exclusively, Your Majesty?"
"I am everywhere the light and the shadows touch. I make my court here, for this land is bountiful and beautiful." And you see out of her back 2 wings covered in black feathers come out, and she comes up into the sky and all the trees shake and you hear the birds scatter. And even along the edges of the forest, you can see bears and deer and creatures like running away from it. When she comes up into the air and she says, I love all my children as I love you, Peregrine. You are a child of both air and shadow.
You praise me, Your Majesty. Lower my head. I'm going to set the immovable rod and perch on it as she approaches. I'm going to say, I must make apology. In traveling in your lands, I was unaware of the edicts that had been passed forward about what the creatures of your realm may and may not do without fear of reprisal or punishment. May I be so bold as to ask a question of your royal majesty?
Speak.
What fate befalls the two quicklings upon their return to the forest floor?
What fate would you two deem as appropriate? And they look at each other and they sort of look at you like, we should be denied fruit for a whole year and not be allowed to unbuckle anyone's horse's saddle as they ride through the forest ever again. Tricky creatures. I simply wish you to be restored to your home and place. Were you to be removed from my forest, you would leave an incompletion. We would not be whole without you. And she looks down at the crater, the guardian left in the woods. And she's like, as my woods are incomplete now, tell me, Peregrine, you have taken my guardian from me. Would you be willing to replace it?
I'd love to make an insight check on the Queen of Air and Darkness, if I might. Let's see here. That is a natural 20. Plus 9 is 29. Let me I'm going to actually, I just want to show.
That,
I don't know if you can see it there.
Wait, I can. Way to roll at the clutch time.
How about it? Unbelievable.
You have a particular insight into this. You yourself aspire to be a creature of calm elemental emotion, one with the air, one with the land, floating like a leaf on the wind. She's not lying to you. She does feel like she is just a pure personified elemental force. You sense no malice from her. You also sense she probably doesn't brook too much tomfoolery for long.
Okay. There is no malice in her. She doesn't brook tomfoolery. Her desire to her desire to have me become a guardian. Do I sense with that insight check that that this is something of a trap? Like if I become guardian, am I like bound to the forest? I'm bound to her service. I am now hers effectively.
Even though again, I'm like 20s or everything. If you get the sense, this is not a trick, it is not a trap. You've known royalty in your time. They're all kind of the same, whether or not they're, elemental forces of nature. Um, she's looking for a champion. You may or may not be able to leave her service. That sort of varies, but she means you no harm in this offer.
Gotcha. Understood. Um, uh, I am honored by your offer, Your Majesty. And I see, yes, I have deprived you of a guardian, and some restitution must be made. I wonder, though, if I am worthy restitution for the guardian I have deprived you of, for indeed I am not certain if I would make a worthy servant for you. May I ask a question of what it is you hold to be the meaning of air and darkness, forces that I myself am familiar with, but may hold differently in my heart than your royal majesty?
You see the shadows that she was made out of start to condense a little bit, and it is almost more like she's made out of stormy clouds.
Mm-hmm.
And the eyes, like they're lightning form, and even like a smile of lightning sort of grows across her face. And she says, "You, my friend, have traveled far and wide. You see, the air is limitless. It knows no restrictions. These creatures can go for a time without water, a longer time without food, but mere seconds without air, and their life is extinguished. And the darkness is the default nature of existence." And she sort of holds her head up to the sun, which is shining now that the clouds are all parted. The sun comes and temporarily disperses the darkness, but it only creates deeper shadows. And when the sun sets, the night sky reveals how far into the depths of the plains the darkness extends. And she floats slowly towards you and she says, "Air and darkness are the foundations of life and existence. All that came before and all that comes after."
Yes. Wiser words never spoken, Your Majesty. I agree with how you have interpreted these most basic needs of the denizens of your realm. I agree that the meaning of air and the sky is limitless, freedom beyond all bound or restriction. And I agree that in the darkness there is welcome respite for those things which seek to avoid the light of the sun. As Queen of Air and Darkness, do you seek then to extend air and darkness to their utmost limits?
She sort of like looks around for a second and she says, "All things see me when they close their eyes. All things feel me when they take a breath. What more do I require?"
I'm going to smile and I'm going to say, um, if the meaning of air and the meaning of darkness are extended to all of the denizens of your realm and your servants, and you will hold by your word in this matter, then I shall agree to make recompense for the loss of your guardian?
She sort of tilts her head, which again, she's like 30 feet. So, I mean, she's huge, and looks at Rastro and Filio sitting on your shoulders and say, do you feel I have treated you unfairly, small friends? And you see both of them kind of get behind your head and like, no, 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 ma'am, no. Beautiful, beautiful. Wait, put the fire out. She might think we're gonna burn the forest down. Don't you put the fire out. You put the fire.
What's she doing back there? It's hot. Put that out.
You're like, no, yeah, no, we're good. Yeah, they both kind of come forward and you can see one of them in each eye, and they're like, if you were to accept her offer, we could hang out a little bit and we could give you a proper race. This flying business is easy, but foot races are where real speed is measured.
My dear brothers, that sounds delightful. You can count me in.
Mm-hmm. You do know you may not be the fastest thing in the sky, sir.
If there is one faster than me, then by all means, let us test our mettle one against the other.
She turns and she looks back down at the forest, and now you can see hundreds, maybe thousands of eyes of all manners of creatures have stopped and are very much looking up the sky and seeing what they're doing. Like along the tops of trees are birds, squirrels, raccoons. The odd bear's head pops up. Even down in the woods, you see pixies and satyrs and boggans and all manner of like forest dwelling creatures peeking out from behind trees and out from bushes looking. You could hear a pin drop in the forest below. Even the wind is completely still.
I'm going to take a moment to cast haste on myself again.
She looks up at you and she's like, does this mean you accept my offer to be the guardian of these, my children?
If you accept my understanding of what it is your realm provides and means, then I accept your offer, Queen of Air and Darkness.
She reaches out and she touches you, and your feathers turn jet black.
Ooh!
And a small mist comes up over you that has like bits of lightning playing across it.
One could imagine becoming very used to this, Your Majesty.
I realize most people will only see you for a moment. That image should be memorable, don't you think?
Yes, Your Majesty.
And she looks at Rastro and Filio and says, now, my friends, it appears I have to teach my new champion the meaning of haste.
Rastro, Filio, I'm going to take the immovable rod, click it, extend a little like handkerchief from it, and just put Rastro and Filio hanging there in the sky.
They're like, yeah.
I will be back in one moment, my dear brothers, and I am going to take off racing across the sky.
I know. They're like, how do we get down from here? And you like, and you see she go boom, and you hear like a sonic boom as she comes off flying after you. And that is a good place for us to stop our narrative.
Yeah. Oh, that was so fun, man. I love that. Oh, that's great.
She is pretty fast though. She's got a fly speed of 150. So I mean, you're still gonna dust her, but
150 is not bad. Right now, I'm moving 720 around. So that's not too shabby, but that's great.
It's full King Kong, full Attack on Titan. Mm.
Incredible.
Yes, no, it's
Oh,
yeah.
I just realized I didn't use my scout ability during the fight with the Guardian. The first time the Guardian showed up with the sword, I have a reaction that lets me move half my speed with no attacks of opportunity. Internet, I'm so sorry I let you down. Oh no.
No, level 20 is tough, especially when you don't grow up. Level 20 multi-class when you don't grow up with that character is very challenging because it is a lot to keep track
Oh,
of.
it is
Yeah.
a whole heck of a lot. Absolutely.
But you know that you and I talked about this when I was on your show, which by the way, people still hit me up asking for links to Theogony and Kairos from that.
oh,
That was like
awesome.
last year we did that. It was about a year ago, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think so. Roundabout. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. Uh,
Um,
but yeah, no, level 20 is my niche, man. They say that I was talking to the people over D&D Beyond. They say less than 5% of games have level 20 characters. Not
wow, wow, wow,
yeah,
wow.
that's it. I mean, obviously, it's hard to grow. You just said yourself, you've had a game that's 11 years and you guys are 18. It's hard to come up the mountain. And then
Yes.
not a lot of people, start at the top of the mountain. But I mean, this is where I enjoy it the most because at 20, the game becomes less about what can you do and more about what should you do.
Right. It's that
No.
very cool superheroic storytelling of we're not as threatened by logistical issues. And I think every DM has felt that somewhere around mid to high levels, when your PCs start getting teleport and they start getting other stuff, all of a sudden it's like, oh, I can't thwart them with logistical problems. We kind of have to move into values based storytelling. What do you want to do? Because you can
Mhm.
probably do it. And that's, of course, like so fascinating and captivating. Um, I love it.
That's one thing I can tell you, my fellow storytellers out there. There's always a bigger bad, and if you've got characters, even when people are like, well, are you ever worried about this powerful character or no? And I'm like, no, because I will attack them with an evil duplicate of themselves. I'll attack them with 5 evil duplicates of themselves. Like, I'm like, that thing you do that's so terrible, here it's being done to you. And you like that unearthly beauty thing, that's all
Yeah,
like, oh,
exactly.
they keep winning. I'm all like, well, guess who also has unearthly beauty? That thing. Roll your
Yes.
con save. Whoops. Now you're dead. Womp womp. Yeah.
It's very, very true. There's always a bigger fish out there. Exactly. Um,
I discovered both the wonder and terror yesterday of the Dawn Titan. Are you familiar with this thing?
I'm not familiar with this
it
thing.
Look it up in D&D Beyond when we're done. It's horrifying. It's horrifying. It uh it has a damaging aura. You get hurt when you hit it, and it does extra damage when it hits you. It's just awful. And by awful, I mean fantastic. I mean, I held off an entire group with one of those things because the battle is so costly. Um
Right. Oh my God.
Yep,
Um,
that was the Magira the Dawn Titan. She's an individual that I will send you a link to here momentarily. But yeah, that was yeah, she
incredible.
yep.
Woo, Doctor.
That's there's always, always a way to challenge people. And like I said, the game becomes more, oh yeah, here she is.
Mhm.
Magira the Dawn Titan. I did a game yesterday for some friends for Ember Moon's
Uh-huh.
um Twitch for the 4th of July, and they didn't notice I had them fight a red, a white, and a blue enemy. They didn't notice because I did it out of order.
Mhm.
I'm like, Moroka, happy birthday, Moroka. Um, and I reskinned Magira as an ice elemental instead of a fire elemental, so she'd be blue. But otherwise, I kept all the logistics the same.
Yes, yes, yes.
That's a terrible creature.
Oh
That's a
wow.
terrible creature.
CR23, that's no joke. Ooh, look at this.
Mm-hmm.
And you got those
Mm-hmm.
legendary actions. Um,
Mm-hmm. No, it's terrible. It's bad, and it gets bad quickly. Like, when you hit or get hit or are nearby, and you're taking 35 a pop, and that's hitting the entire group, it adds
Yeah.
up quick. Because again, they start feeling indestructible until you're like, "Well, I just dropped 70 on you. Are you sure?" And
Yeah.
they're like, "Hmm,
Oh, this
hmm."
is starting to hurt. Yes, I don't
Yeah,
like this.
reevaluating my life choices. Well, all right, good sir. As we begin to wrap it up here, again, tell everybody where they can find you and what you're doing next.
Tons of Dimension 20, as always. It's coming out once a week on Dropout.tv. We also have weekly live premieres that are free, where it jumps out behind the paywall for a second on youtube.com/Dimension20 show. We're wrapping up our season of Crown of Candy right now, which is like Candyland meets Game of Thrones mashup. And it's truly brutal season of political intrigue with little gumdrops and peppermint people. And that's Wednesdays that premieres at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific every Wednesday. And then we have a little talkback show called Adventuring Party after that with the cast. You can find me at Brennan LM on Twitter, at Brennan Lee Mulligan on Instagram. More Dimension 20 coming out every Wednesday. Stay tuned for more fun stuff. Heck yeah.
So now let me ambush you with an impromptu love fest that you yourself may not remember. Dear internet, the reason why I even met this dude is he was working on a story, and he was concerned with the portrayal of some of the characters in the story and wanted to make sure that he took the time to properly portray certain elements of like what an urban community might be or what people of color might be. And he hit me up essentially to do like a little consulting thing for him. And this was way back when. This was like maybe 2 years ago.
Dave was one of the original consultants for the first season of The Unsleeping City, which was the second main. This was like way early on. This was before we had even premiered. This was before launch of Dropout. So no one had even seen Fantasy High yet when I was already working with Dave. Dave is, in addition to one of the best players and GMs you could ever ask for, an incredible consultant whose advice was exemplary.
No, stop it. You don't make this love about me. This is love about you. I just wanted to give you props for being on the right side of this thing in advance before there was any external pressure, before it was a talking point, before it was a hashtag. You, of your own volition, were trying to make sure you were on the right side of diversity and inclusion and in proper portrayals of people that are different than you. And I always respected that. So, props to you, Brennan Lee Mulligan, for all of your good work, sir.
Oh well,
You're blushing. My work here is done. I got him, y'all.
All I can say is it's obvious that everyone with the kind words are received. I feel that those are no-brainers, and those are things that everyone I accept but cannot fully take that praise, because I think that is a bar that everyone should be clearing in their work. So I love and appreciate you. Thank you for the kind words. It's a no-brainer to me that people should, that every creator has a responsibility to make sure that their work is always as inclusive and ethical as possible. And you can't, like you're saying, there is no self-made man, no man is a village. If you're not involving people in your work to make sure it's as ethical as it can be, you will stumble and fall. So all of the Uno reverse redirect praise, it's all because of you. That it's a privilege and an honor to have been able to work with you in the past and with other awesome people in the community as well. So I love you. Thank you for that. And it's a no-brainer. Everyone should be doing that.
Right back at you, man. And I cannot top that. I will say, I didn't say this, but I can tell you who our guest next week is going to be. It's going to be Miss Anna Proser. Is going to be coming on. I'm not even sure if we're doing D&D or Vampire yet, but we're going to be doing a thing. Is it Proser or Prosser? Did I just say her name wrong? That was Proser, right?
I've only ever seen it written. So it looks like it would be pronounced Prosser, but I don't know.
Is it Prosser? Her. I've heard it, but my brain will not tell me what it is right now. But you know who I'm talking
I
about,
know
internet.
of who you speak. Yes.
Yes, she will be here with us next week, and we're gonna be doing a something. But until then, uh, there's really great things to be watching. Despite all the insanity, it's still a wonderful time to be alive. So go out and enjoy it, or maybe don't go out and enjoy it, pending where you are. Come enjoy it with us digitally, and we will see you soon. Okay. Thanks again, Brennan. Bye.
Yay!